All right, welcome to Two Sons Podcast. Happy Thursday, everybody. Look at us. We're on time for a Rings
We're
of
on
Power
time.
episode. Release one at a time, and we're your guys.
Yes.
We can make that happen. But a very interesting episode. A little bit weird.
Yeah.
A lot of monster reveals. Vague,
So cool.
Supernatural characters getting
Yes.
revealed.
Give me more.
We had a giant slug that was in some quicksand.
Forgot about that.
We had the return of the Ents. Those of you
Ents.
guys from the original movies might remember those. We also had these weird ghosts that
Yes.
appeared to be of ancient man
The
kings.
Borowitz.
Yeah.
The Borowites, however you say
Yeah,
that.
the Barrow Whites.
Yeah.
That, they had to be killed by their own weapons. Lots and lots of interesting stuff to get into. I think, where I wanted to start is, and this was something you and I kind of started to talk about for a couple of minutes before we got into the actual recording, but it seems like we're headed towards a sort of cataclysm at Eregion. That seems to be happening because at this point in time, Sauron is there. Celebrimbor is there, presumably with some sort of elvish garrison.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the dwarves are there, presumably
Correct.
with some sort of dwarvish garrison. The
orcs.
elves under the orcs are on their way.
Definitely
with
on their way.
Adar with a massive army. And
Yeah.
Elrond has now separated from Galadriel with the rest of the group from Lindon to return to
go
Lindon
back.
to make sure that the soldiers that they send don't go to Mordor, but presumably to Eregion. So I feel like we're headed towards some sort of cataclysm there, and I'm really curious to see
Yeah.
what they're cooking up.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong on that. I think you're totally right.
I'm where it gets interesting, and I thought Galadriel did a good job of kind of like breaking this down at the end when she was like, basically we're all at war, but like. What's interesting about it is the kind of motivations for everybody, right? Because Adar is presumably. Can we assume now that Sauron baited Adar into bringing the army to Eregion? Like, why did he go to Mordor and turn himself in to then just be like, "Hey, by the way, Sauron's still
Oh,
alive."
I see. Yeah, I think
And
you're
then,
probably right.
but he had to have known he would have gotten followed.
At this point, I think anything that Sauron's doing right now is super calculated.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I would presume at this point everything is still going towards Sauron's plan, according to his plan.
What's been fascinating is like Carly and I had a little debate last night because I got Carly on board. I was like, "Hey, listen, you got to give this a shot." And so she watched episode 1 with me last night. And she really enjoyed it. And one of the things her and I actually debated the same debate you and I kind of had on the show last
whether or
time
not to
about
play
like
the
whether
game.
or not to put the ring on.
What'd she say?
And she kind of looked at it the same way that we did, in the sense that at a certain point, if they don't put the rings on, then the tree in Lindon dies, and then
Yeah.
they essentially have to leave Middle Earth, which then condemns Middle Earth to death,
Right.
or rule under Sauron. So they kind of had no choice.
It's really bad optics too. The elves are like, peace. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gonna suck to live here.
But the dynamic between Elrond and Galadriel is super fascinating to me, because
Runs
they're clearly like strong friends in a way that runs very, very deep. But Elrond is like straight up pissed at
Right.
Galadriel, and that line when they're leaving, and that one dude is like, "She sacrificed herself to save
Right.
us," and he's like, "No, she didn't.
I know.
She sacrificed herself to save this
Yeah.
fucking ring."
Right.
And you could tell he's just thoroughly convinced that her mind is poisoned. We find out the ring has a new power in this episode. It's straight
Which
up
is to
heals.
heal. And then,
Yeah.
so I'm just wondering, like, where'd the rest of that arrow go that's still in that guy?
Yeah, it's
Like, Galadriel, you did a great job, but get that sucker out,
right next
please.
to the pancreas.
No, like that's an appendix shot,
Okay,
if I'd
yeah.
ever say so. Yeah, we need to get that out. So he's gonna get sick soon. No, but I mean, Galadriel and Elrond are having that conversation at the Broken Bridge.
Yeah.
And he just will not listen to her. Like, anything that she says, he's probably just gonna do the opposite at this point. It's like, oh, that damn ring. Let's do the opposite.
But all of his arguments have made sense, because he's like,
For sure.
He's like, Galadriel goes, "Okay, so the ring is telling me that if we go south, we're going to run into these like hills where there's this evil. This is going to be bad." And,
Right.
And Elrond's like, he's clearly watching both directions because he's just so smart. Like, it seems like Elrond is like the one guy that seems to truly understand not just Sauron's goals, but his methodology.
Right.
Which is like, whatever you're doing, he's probably wanting you to do that.
Yeah, Yeah, we talked about this last episode, but like him and Durin seem to be the Prince Durin.
Yes.
Seem to be the only two that like really see the big picture here.
I agree. And what I thought was specifically interesting is it almost seemed like Elrond was like, okay, if the ring is warning Galadriel to not go south, therefore we should go south. And to his credit, he gets there and they encounter some evil and they lose an elf as a result.
Yes, they do.
But he also solves the puzzle, so to speak, by getting into the tomb and grabbing that old sword, and he starts using the old sword to kill the Barrow Wights. Barrow Wights were really cool.
So cool, dude. Yeah. When the elf is looking across that little valley and then sees the two blue eyes, that was so sick.
Oh my gosh,
that was like peak Lord of the Rings, magical, creepy vibes. Yeah, you know, it was so cool.
One of the things
they're blue. I like that they were like this
little White Walker-esque.
Yeah, it was so cool that it wasn't like yellow or red like you'd typically expect. They were just like blue.
It's kind of an interesting concept because the way they explained it, they were the burial grounds for these like ancient kings of men or ancient lords of men. And it's fascinating because we also know that like the other ancient kings of men, who must be a different group of ancient kings of men. They're the kings of right now because they're the ones who end up wearing the rings. But the kings of men that end up becoming the Nazgul under Sauron with the Ring of Power, like they all become like creepy demon fighters too. So it's like all the men who actually aspired to become king and succeeded all eventually just became serving Dark Lords.
I like the idea too that Sauron can just be like rise, and then he can just make these people just rise out of their graves, and then they're almost just like little sentinels that are just there until someone walks by and then they get attacked. It's so cool.
But that's specifically what is cool about this show is like Sauron in the movies was very limited in his scope of power in the sense that like he had the eye, and the eye could like see, and the eye could also see whoever was wearing the ring, and he had the Nazgul underneath his command, and he had some other things, but like there's actually having like the corporeal form of Sauron walking around this universe just messing stuff up is actually kind of like a cool twist and is very different. And I've said this to you before, but I'm bizarrely invested in this all of a sudden in a way that I wasn't in season 1.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Watch us replace Star Wars with just Lord of the Rings.
It's just like it's not Two Sons, it's the Two Rings podcast.
Two Rings podcast. Yeah, name change. I'm down.
I'm down. But yeah, so that like the gist of the Elrond and Galadriel storyline, we got to basically that they discover the army of orcs come in, and they realize if they send their armies to Mordor, they're not even going to find anything there. So they're like, okay, we need to redirect. They disappear. Epic Galadriel fight scene.
I was just about to bring that up. That needs to be discussed. She is a badass.
She is very much a badass.
She's shooting exploding fire arrows into orcs' chests.
Yes, and dude.
Pretty cool.
She had some pretty epic fight scenes in the first season, if you remember. But it's very clear that they're leaning into this, like Galadriel is like this crazy warrior concept, which I'm so down
Which people
for.
are hating, though. You and I got some grief with our last episode. Someone really hated on us for enjoying Lord of the Rings.
Oh, dude.
No surprise. And it cracks me up. But a lot of people hate the fact that Galadriel is a warrior. That bothers a lot of people because that goes against her character in the originals. Yeah,
and I get that. I mean, here's the thing. You and I are coming at this from a different angle.
We're complete novices.
I looked at a set of just reviews on Rotten Tomatoes actually today because I just was curious. I just wanted to see how it performed, and good reviews from the critics. It was like high 80s if I remember correctly. But among the audience, it was lower. It was like in the 60s. And when I read through some of the kind of like audience reviews, the ones that aren't made by the actual critics, and a lot of people are like, hey, there are a lot of like token diehards who are upset with how it's going, and I get that.
I get that too.
You're not going to get that perspective from us because we're not really token diehards. Like we're fans of the Lord of the Rings material, but like we've pretty much only been exposed to the movies in the Hobbit, the 3 Hobbit movies, and like it. So for us, like we're not necessarily invested, but I can relate to that.
Oh,
because
dude,
like if they took the Darth Plagueis novel and just completely shredded it, like I think I'd be pretty upset too. I understand.
We know what that's like to get like your heart ripped out by Star Wars, right? We've been there.
This is different though in the sense, and to tell me if you think I'm wrong, but like it was two things with Disney. It wasn't just like demolishing the original plot that we fell in love with. It was also like a lot of poor acting,
Right.
a lot of like poor writing,
Like money
failing to
siphoning
tell
in other areas.
Exactly. Yeah, like who knows where.
Conspiracies.
Kathleen Kennedy's mega yacht somewhere where all the acolyte money went.
We're totally kidding.
I'm just kidding. It's one of those things where like I see a difference in that this to me still feels like, for as big the budget is, it's not insane in scale. So like it's not like we're seeing armies of 50,000, you know.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet at least. And that maybe that'll happen at some point, but like they spent 460 million in season 1 without that, and like it's been very deliberate, and they took an enormous amount of time and effort to get into a lot of the details. I think it's been very well acted. I think it's been very
Agreed.
well casted. And I am invested in a lot of the specific storylines. And like also they're telling a story that is an important part of this story. Now, is it different from the books? Probably, according to you, token experts, it appears to be so. But like I think it's different because with Star Wars, it felt cheesy, like straight up cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not getting cheesy vibes from
Not at
this
all.
in that sort of sense.
Not at all. The only thing that's there's one thing that kind of took me out of the story during this most recent episode, and it wasn't even bad. This was something that I enjoyed that took me out of the story, was when Poppy and Nori meet. We were just talking about his name, Merrimack.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because they're literally being chased by the people on horseback, right? And then they jump down that little cliff, and then they meet Merrimack, and it totally felt like when you're playing a video game and you run up on like an NPC.
Oh yeah, and the character's like
everything
waiting.
stops.
Yeah,
like the whole entire world stops. You become impermeable to anything just because you're talking to an NPC, you know. And then the plot starts again where they're like, oh my gosh, like we're on the run again, and they start to run off. That's the only thing that took me out of it.
The scene that took me out was when the stranger was chasing the piece of paper and not getting it.
Oh,
because there were a couple of times where like it was like here,
yeah,
and his arm wasn't extended, and I'm like, bro, have you seen your wingspan? Like, go grab that thing.
Yeah, I think that was just because Tom was in control of the paper, and I think he was just kind of messing with the stranger.
Let's talk about Tom a little bit.
All
right. This was an interesting kind of like direction for the show to go. You and I just did a bunch. Tom Bombadil. We did a little bit of an initial research. I read the Hobbit book, the original book, but I did not read the actual novelizations of Fellowship of the Ring and Two Towers and Return of the King. And so I had not met this character, but apparently this is a pretty famous token character who got removed from the movies specifically because his character really didn't play a significant role. I guess like in the Fellowship of the Ring, he rescued the hobbits from a couple of different situations that they found themselves in, but this is his first appearance in live action. From what I understand, some of the Tolkien originalists are not a huge fan of the way his character is being utilized in this show either. But what's interesting enough is he seems like a wizard, like he's giving off wizard vibes, but he also seems like a non-partial participant in the sense that like even when he's breaking down for the stranger, like for Gandalf, our man Gandalf, when he's breaking down the fact that like, hey, like the Dark Wizard is looking to team up with Sauron, and there's an interesting angle there too because the Dark Wizard doesn't have a name yet, and you wonder if maybe he's going to be Sauron at some point in the future because Sauron does end up teaming up with Sauron eventually, but like he basically says like, yeah, you got to do this, you got to face them both, and then he kind of just is like, I'm not going to do it though. Like,
yeah,
I'm not doing anything. You're doing it.
Yeah, why can't you? You seem pretty powerful.
And that seems to be kind of his like kind of like what kind of like makes him
his
who
MO.
He is he just doesn't really he doesn't participate.
He's down to train the stranger, it sounds like, but he won't fight Sauron.
But then he said it wasn't like it wasn't about training, it was about like deserving. Like you have to earn the right.
Yeah,
like
but I feel like that's part of like just changing the way the stranger's thinking. Like he's like Yoda to Luke.
He's doing some Yoda stuff to him.
Yeah, like when Luke meets Yoda.
Okay, yes I will.
Right, yeah. When Luke meets Yoda, there's some odd conversations that happen around the fact that Yoda's like playing hard to get.
Oh yeah,
a little bit.
There was a weird line though, where like when he was talking about fighting Sauron in the Dark Wizard, where he was like, "I'm just going to continue to pick the somethings until they don't grow anymore," or something like that. He was talking about some sort of like thing that he would be farming, and he was just like, "I'm just going to continue to pick the whatevers until while they're still here," because he just thinks the world's good. It was super interesting because like he kind of has this affable like kind of like just oblivious kind of not oblivious is the wrong word. It's just
unbothered.
Just like unbothered. That's the perfect
unbothered
word. Yeah, he just looks completely unbothered by the fact that like all hell is breaking loose. Like there's multiple armies on the move. Like literally,
right. And then he's just got his little goat farm.
Yeah, exactly. He's got his little goat farm
and his tree.
Gandalf is one of what they call the Istar, and there's like 5 of them that were sent from the Valar, according to like the old Tolkien works. Like the Valar were like they're like superior to the elves, but they also live on the same continent where Valinor is. So like that's an interesting kind of concept. But like they're there, but they're like above the elves. But anyways, they send these Istar to Middle Earth to help the free peoples fight against Sauron, apparently. And I correct me if I'm butchering that, if you're a Tolkienite and I'm getting that wrong. But like that's what's kind of fascinating about it, is like this is a very, very important piece of the plot here, which is like this is an Istar that doesn't know what he is yet or what his role is, and like here comes Tom Bombadil. It's like you're the guy that's gonna like help him. Well, I'm not really gonna do much.
Yeah,
so.
Sure. Let's start by just taking a seat and you just take a bath.
Here's a bar of soap.
Yeah, here's a bar of soap, and then we'll chat.
The pot behind you might rattle every once in a while.
It's kind of fun when you're discovering that Tom does have powers, though, because subtly it just ramps up with him using everything, right? Like, for example, he walks through the curtain, and one of the curtains just by itself just kind of goes up and hangs itself. And then you're kind of wondering, I'm like, did I just catch that? Like, is this guy using magic? And then I almost paused it and then replayed it, but I was like, no, it's just going to be so obvious here. And then sure enough, what did he turn into, like a loaf of bread?
Oh, the piece of paper.
Yeah, he turns a piece of paper into a loaf of bread. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, glad I didn't spend my time
There's
rewinding.
a lot of magic in Lord of the Rings.
It's
definitely part of its thing, but it's always like it has like it's interesting to me because there's almost like a musical element to Lord of the Rings. And those of you guys who remember the movies, they were a lot like this, where like the elves would be singing when they'd walk, and then the dwarves would sing, and then there's Durin's wife sings to the mountain at one point.
Beautiful.
Like there's a lot of like a musical element to Lord of the Rings that seems kind of tied in with the magic, and it kind of is it's kind of like the very much part of the cinematography where the show kind of follows like almost like a rhythm and a flow that kind of has magic and music behind everything. Like you're kind of just like magically dancing around from scene to scene.
It's such a vibe.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's very different from other things that we've watched. I was trying to explain it to my mom this morning. Because my mom hasn't watched it yet, and I was like, because my mom loves Game of Thrones, and I was like,
does she really?
Yeah, and my mom's even evangelical Christian, right? So like, obviously, she doesn't like some of the darker parts of Game of Thrones,
sure.
And so I'm literally like, you would love this because like, yeah, there's some evil versus good stuff going on, but like, you're not just gonna have a random 10-inch rubber penis or like a bunch of unnecessary nudity or anything like that. Like you're gonna be able to be more invested. I think my mom would enjoy it. It's a little bit more light and airy.
I had the exact same conversation with my mom this morning.
Oh, really?
Well, because she likes Tolkien because of his history, right? And like she likes his roots and where he came from, and she also enjoys a good versus evil story. And this is like such a beautiful one. Like the world of Lord of the Rings, it feels so grand and magical, and there's so much at stake, but it's also just so palatable when you watch it. It's just a total vibe.
Very basic concept too. You and I were joking about this the other day, like the good versus evil element of it. And apparently you had said that like Tolkien has said that he never intended for his work to be like a corollary for the Bible, but it kind of is.
And everyone's like, okay, but
like,
but it is.
Yeah.
Well, you're even talking about like the song and how important that is. Like you think of like ancient like chanting and hymns and stuff. Like it feels very like biblical sometimes.
Oh, dude, were you getting Lucifer vibes from the opening to episode 1?
What do you mean?
So when God, it's been a long time since I've researched all this stuff, but like from what I understand, Lucifer, the angel, the fallen angel who becomes Satan, was like the most beautiful of all the angels.
Oh, okay.
And like that was kind of like his thing, is he had pride, and then he challenged God, and then that's when God cast him out or whatever. And so there's this scene at the beginning of episode 1 of season 2 of Rings of Powers where Sauron is with the orcs, and like he just has this kind of like majestic like he's wearing very gaudy clothing,
he's super pompous,
flowing hair, and there's even like a moment where after he kills that one orc with like the multiple stabs to the eyes, he kind of like swoops his hair back and kind of has like this moment where he's like and then he like returns to the conversation, and then it like there's like these dark veins that kind of come around his eyes, so like it's interesting because like that's what's fascinating. And honestly, this Anatar character kind of follows the same kind of like vibe, but like that's what's so fascinating about Sauron, is it's very much like this this evil masquerading as good, and that does follow very much a biblical corollary.
For sure, it does
as it pertains to Lucifer.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah.
So our 2 Harfoots get abducted by the Stores in this like kind of little
like friendly abducted again.
Yes, like friendly abducted again in this like canyon where these people are. They get confronted by the bad guys that are hanging out in this what's the name of this land that we're in? I'm trying to remember. Rune. In Rune.
The main bad guy's name, I think, is Brank, by the way.
Brank. Okay, he's the guy who's leading the troop of like the masked characters.
Yeah, the mask, they look so cool.
Yeah. And your brother came through in the comments, was pointing out how the guy you were trying to think of was the
Poe Dameron.
Yeah, Poe Dameron's girlfriend in Rise of Skywalker.
Episode. Yeah, he knows me well. Yeah, so but they get abducted, and then Nori by chance kind of talks about the origins of her Harfoot, and then she kind of puts 2 and 2 together along with what's her name, the Grund. I think they call her the Grund. And they kind of realize that they're of the same.
Yeah, so are we interpreting them, the Canyon people, as basically ancestors of the Harfoots that basically branched off when the Harfoots used to be there?
Yep, I think that's exactly what it is.
So and to that point, like that's a pretty strong indicator that the Harfoots are also like the ancestors of the Hobbits, because the Hobbits would have inevitably have been a group of Harfoots that put their roots down and hung in the same place.
That would make sense. Yep.
Arondir. In Isildur.
Yes.
Arondir quickly identifies that Isildur's girlfriend is actually a one of the wild men. Right.
Wild woman.
Wild woman.
Yeah.
She makes an interesting point, which is like when she swipes Isildur's sword, and she basically goes like, they will never accept me. And there's some truth to that, because that's a strong vibe I pick up from this show, even dating back to season 1, which is like, once you've signed on with Adar or with Morgoth or with any of those evil people, like you're officially untrustworthy forever.
Which I kind of understand.
Yeah, but I do.
I get where she's coming from, and also, speaking for her, like, what other choice does she have? If she didn't,
if he said no, you got speared.
Literally
within seconds.
Yes.
That one guy, it's like the guy like hesitated for a second. It was like,
I know. Can you imagine like an orc just like dripping on you? Because orcs are always like moist for some reason.
Yeah, they're always like drooling.
They're gross.
Why are they bleeding out of their mouth?
Dude,
I don't understand.
Blood. I know. It's like, brush your teeth, like gingivitis, But it's like, if she says no, she's gonna get killed. And obviously, she's not a bad person, or at least she doesn't seem like she's actually a bad person. When she actually finds her fiance, that was such a big bummer for Isildur. Yeah, like, what? He just walks off.
Dude,
poor
Isildur,
guy.
Though, like, of course he falls in love with the random chick.
I know, and she fell in love with him.
Dude, Isildur, like, is just, it's one bad decision after the next.
What do you mean by that?
That's all he knows how to do.
It's not his fault.
I feel like he makes a lot of bad decisions. I feel like he is a lost soul, and he has one more really big bad decision.
Yeah, of course. That's a good take. There's bad decisions though, and then there's bad decisions. There's bad decision that like Isildur is making, where he like falls in love with someone, and then
Here's
there's
my
bad
sword.
decisions.
You can grab it. It's right there if you want it.
Right, I know. You're right. And then there's bad decisions like the kids out of Outer Banks, which is just like the epitome of bad decisions.
Yeah,
I brought that up.
Your Outer Banks.
I brought that up. But and then the Ents kind of go hand in hand with Isildur's plot line. What a cool take on like two magnificent giant Ents. I think I wrote their names down. What were they? It was Snaggleroot and Winterbloom were the names of the
in Winterbloom.
Yes.
A female ant too, something we did not get in the past.
And
very upset about cutting trees down.
I know. And then Arondir essentially has to apologize for anybody that's ever like stepped and broke a twig. Like anybody that's ever touched firewood before.
Yes, with great regret. I did have to cut down a tree at one point in time.
Meanwhile, they're literally burning wood to make a fire as the Ents are watching them, right?
I know.
That did take me out of it a little bit.
When were they burning the wood?
No, so I think they're at their camp, right? And then that's when I think they had a fire. I presume they had a fire. And then they did, hands her the key. Yeah.
No, you're right. It's the Ents have this weird thing because we remember this from the Two Towers. So Saruman cuts the forest down to basically work his forges so that he can make the weapons for the Uruk-hai that he's sending to help Sauron in the Two Towers. And the Ents, they're just walking Merry and Pippin out of the forest, and they come to a clearing where all the trees are cut down, and he specifically says, "These trees were my friends." Because,
yikes,
you're not cutting an Ent down. Like, you hit him with an axe one time, he's kicking you in the face.
Right.
So, but what's crazy about that is, so there's these trees, and then there's these Ents. And they actually refer to them as tree shepherds, I believe. But it's funny because they're best friends with the trees.
Yeah.
They're like buddies.
Kind of
so they're legitimately pissed off when you cut them down.
Right. It's like, sorry, Winterbloom, but these trees make really good boats, and we really need these.
Exactly. I wish there was a compromise. It's we get to cut down some of the trees.
You're right. No, I know. I'm thinking of myself like a woodworker, and I'm all of a sudden feeling guilty for being into woodworking.
Dude, there was when I was up in Seattle, when we went to Mount Rainier, I drove through I ended up taking a weird route. I ended up going around the north side of the mountain to the east side of the mountain and then around and entering it coming from the east as opposed to going down through down through Tacoma and then shooting back out east to get to the mountain. And so I went through a lot of rural areas out there. And the foresting thing is kind of a crazy endeavor. They cut these massive patches, these big square patches out. But then from what I understand, they kind of go to the next and to the next, and then by the time they get back around, apparently they
reforest.
They reforest, and apparently they do something. They were stacking all of the debris in these big stacks, which apparently from what I understand they do that so that they decompose faster because there's deeper down it's more moist and more
interesting.
It was kind of an interesting it was interesting to see because it's a part of infrastructure that you just don't see in Arizona because in Arizona it's
it's no trees.
It's 105 degrees today actually. There's not a lot of trees to grow out of that stuff September 5th.
Buildings aren't made out of cacti, so we don't need to worry about that. No, it is interesting though because obviously it's such an important role in our infrastructure, but obviously we don't want to deforest everything. So, and I think from what I understand, we've gotten way more responsible with how we've obtained our lumber.
From what I understand, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not in all areas of the world.
I don't know enough about it to have a take.
Yeah, let's not talk about
I don't
it.
have a take because I don't know enough about it. I don't want to sit up here and be like, the foresting companies are doing a really good job replenishing the forest. And
who knows?
That's actually bullshit.
Yeah, that's actually bullshit.
They are forest murderers.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, so I think that's just... Theo and Arondir, if you remember, Theo told Arondir, don't ever talk to me again. And then now Theo's thanks for keeping your promise, bro.
A real stepdad moment.
Yeah, that was cool. I like that. But then everyone goes their separate way. What do you think Theo's promise is that he intended to keep? Do you think he made a promise to the men that he was trapped with?
I have no clue.
Because Arondir's promise, I think, is to the trees. And I think he's going to follow the orc army.
Yes. Yeah, I think he's big picture. Theo, I think, is still... definitely a coin that has two sides. I could see Theo being a great character and a total or protagonist, but something tells me that he's going to end up being a bad dude.
Did Iran? I still get that vibe from him too.
Yeah,
he just
too
yeah,
angsty.
He's definitely the guy that, like, when he's got the two guys on his shoulder talking, the good guy and the bad guy, he's definitely partial to listening.
Yeah.
The even if he's good at his core, like, he just gets swayed.
Right.
Arondir definitely proclaimed him lord of that group.
Right.
That was kind of an interesting
Super
thing.
casual.
Yeah.
Classic elf.
Another
move.
another not great decision, by the way,
Right.
from one of the characters of the show. But yeah, I am curious to see what promises that because like he clearly had some conversation with those guys that were trapped in that jail cell. We kind of like got away from it. And then like the dude that was in there with them, one of them was actually the guy who was with the girl that Isildur was into. And so there's the Estrid, I think is her name, right?
Yeah.
So like that, like presumably they're all going to go back to the river village. And now at that point, all of them are now with the men of the Southlands, but all the people that were trapped in that tree are people that had the mark of
the brand.
Adar on it. So like that is a concept I don't think they've really delved into yet that I think they need to
Yeah,
explain.
I don't know if that's something that they just don't touch. I think I wonder if that's something that they're just expecting everybody just to kind of forget about. Because I was curious. Well, no, they are going to have to touch it because the guy that shows up, his name is Hagen, I believe. There's going to have to be conflict between him and Isildur.
You'd think so.
There has to.
Yeah,
I mean,
why would they
develop,
take the time to develop that if Isildur's just like, all right, moving on to the next one?
To me, also, it feels like that entire story arc is literally just there just to have the whole entire like love story bit that is typically in most storylines.
You think they're just cramming in a love story? So is Isildur going to kill this other dude?
No, I think he's going to do something bad down the road, and then he's going to win the girl.
He's going to... Oh, you think the other guy's going to do something bad?
Yeah.
So you think Isildur pulled the other girl to the good side?
Yes.
Okay. And so when they try to do their, like, we infiltrated the river village and tried to do some shit, it's going to be Isildur that pulls Estrid to the light and, like, kills these dudes.
Yeah. Or something along that.
Okay.
Or I think...
I think that's a good
her
prediction.
fiance is going to do something evil, and then she's going to switch and join Isildur.
Okay. I think that's a completely reasonable...
But to me, there's so many arcs, right? And this one just feels like literally like the love story arc. And I feel like that's all it is.
No, I agree with you. I'm excited. I'm excited to see where all this is going with the rings. Elrond is probably my favorite character at this point. I just like his combination of like the way he's acting towards his elf friends is so funny to me because he's very clearly like, look, we're all in this together, but screw you guys.
I know.
This. Like he's so mad. Like he's so mad. Like every time he even sees like there was even a part 2 where he was like, I would never take any counsel from that ring.
No.
Like, yeah, like it's so interesting. And that to me makes him like the most fascinating character in the show right now. Cause he's working with the good guys, but very clearly on a completely different plane of thought than them in terms of the way he's interpreting all of this.
Yeah.
Like Galadriel doesn't know shit either about this ring because like she didn't think it was gonna heal stuff. Like,
no,
they're all like like clearly.
Yeah,
it's very clear that she's. It's a lot of wishful thinking on Gil-galad and Círdan and Galadriel's part that these rings are gonna work out. Yeah.
And the rings just feel so good on the finger. You know what I mean?
That is a consistent thing from the movies, though.
Oh yeah, my precious, right? I think my favorite character at this point has to be Prince Durin.
Prince Durin is really good.
By far. How can you not?
Characters are good.
All the dwarves, they're so gruff, but yet they just have that like that loving shit talk aspect that they all do to each other. Like it is such a great thing and something that like I'm just so used to with my family.
Oh, okay.
You know, every single time I see my uncles, and it's just always trash.
Just feel like you're hanging with the dwarves.
Yeah, like you know, one day I was sitting on the couch and I tilt my head back, and my Uncle Butch, yeah, of course his name's Uncle Butch, right? Like he sees my hairline and he's like, "Damn, look at that hairline!" And he's like lighting me up in front of a room full of like 25 people. You know, it was so funny. So I just love it. Like Prince Durin is my guy.
I've had beers with your family. You guys definitely have that type of camaraderie. That is definitely unique. It's and somewhat rare out there. Which you definitely have a very strong family unit. It's definitely something you guys should be.
Yeah, super blessed.
You guys should be proud of.
Super blessed. We know how to have some fun.
All right, guys, that is all we have for today.
Dude,
As
what a
always-
random pod we had today.
It was kind of a random pod. It was kind of a
got
weird episode,
derailed.
too. It was
Yeah,
all over the place.
All over the place.
It's fine.
That's
That's how
fine.
it goes.
Yeah.
We appreciate you guys for supporting the show. We'll be back this time next week for episode 5. We will see you guys then.
Thanks a lot.